All right, our component is ready. Now we're going to add this to a form. So we need to combine it with an error message inside a new component. This is exactly the same technique we used in the first part of this course. So earlier we created these components, form field, which renders a text box inside a form, and form picker, which renders a drop-down list inside a form. Now we want to add a new component. I'm going to call this FormImagePicker.js. So here's our component. Now in this component, we're not going to use this view. So delete. That means we don't need the styles object either. And let's also delete this line. So here we're going to add an image input list and an error message. Note that we have multiple implementations. We're going to use the implementation in the current folder. That is the implementation that belongs to our project. We also have an implementation in Formic. We're not going to use that one here. So here's our error message. Now, because we have multiple components, we need to wrap them inside a fragment. Okay. Now, let's set image URIs to, what are we going to use here? Well, in this component, we're not going to have local state because Formic is going to maintain our form state. So here we should use Formic context to get access to the state for this field and then pass it as a prop. So to save time, I'm going to go to form picker and borrow some code. We're going to copy this line, the line where we use Formic context. So copy, paste it over here. Now we need to import Formic context. So import, use Formic context from Formic. Now while you're here, let's also sort these import statements. That's better. So with Formic context, we get access to the values object. As you know, this object has all the values for our form. Now here we only want to get the value for this particular field. So let's give this component a new prop, name. And here we get values of name. I'm using the same technique we used in the first part of this course. So if what I'm showing you is foreign to you, you really have to go back and watch the first part. So here's the image URIs. Now we should handle the two events. On add image, we set this to handle add. And on remove image, we set it to handle remove. Now to save time, let's borrow some code from our app component. So we go to app.js. We're going to copy these two functions, handle add and remove. Now let's paste them over here. We need to make a couple of changes to this function. First of all, we're not going to call this function setImageURIs because earlier we used this to update our local state. But here we don't have local state. Our state is maintained by Formic. So here we should tell Formic to update the value for this field. To do that, we're going to use this function, setFieldValue. This function has two parameters, name and value. For the name parameter, I'm going to use the name prop here, and here's our value, the updated array, okay? Now here we have a reference to image URIs. This is the state variable we defined in our app component. We have to get the value from the values object. So values of name. Now we have to make the same changes to this other function. So here we call setFieldValue, pass the name, and replace image URIs with values of name. Now, because we have used this expression multiple times, we could give it an alias to make our code more readable. So I'm going to define a constant called image URIs and set it to values of name. Now, we're going to replace these three instances. Let me show you a cool technique. So I've selected this expression. Now we want to enable multi-cursor editing. If you're on Mac, press Command and D. If you're on Windows, press Control and D. Here's the second cursor. One more time. Here's the third cursor. Now we can replace all these instances in one go. So image URIs. Press Escape and we're done. So the last part is our error message component. Once again, to save time, I'm going to go to our form picker component and copy the code for the error message component. So let's replace this. So here's our form image picker. The next step is to add this to our listing edit form. We'll do that next.